Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming on time. Thank you for being with us on our sixth and last session for ADL 2.0. So this is the culmination of half a year of meeting once a month and working asynchronously. And we're really grateful that all of you are here with us up to now. We have a full morning, it being our last session. So let's start by gathering ourselves in prayer before I turn you over to Kate. You want? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Teach us, dear Lord, to teach as you did. Give us your eyes that we may see the promise unique in every learner in our class. Give us your ears that we may hear the questions brewing in our students' hearts. Give us your hands that we may guide them in their quest to find you in all things. And most of all, give us your heart that we may love each and every student as you have loved us. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, Kate, turning over the floor to you.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Hopefully you can see.
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I needed a second there. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today for this closing session. Thank you, Jen, for the prayer, and to the SALT team once again. I can't thank you enough. Father Johnny, who couldn't be here today, but Galvin, Jay, Rita, Isabel, on and on, Solvi, so many good folks at SALT that have helped bring this together and bring all of us together over the last 6 months. And it's just been a great team to work with. So I appreciate you all. And of course, I'm so happy that all the participants are here too. Before we begin, I want to share with you the work of a dance company called Infinite Flow. This is about a minute, this video, maybe a minute and a half. Great. So as you can probably tell, Infinite Flow is a dance company that works to dismantle stereotypes and showcase the beauty of inclusion through live performances, videos, and other media. I'm so moved and inspired by their work, and I hope that inspired some of you too. I'll actually talk a little bit more about them later in the presentation. So we'll get started by exploring accessibility and inclusion, which is so important in all course design, not only online course design. And then we'll take a look at coaching culture and receiving feedback, which is part of what will help you develop a feedback practice at your institution. We'll review the capstone assignment, and then we should have a good amount of time for Q&A before the SALT team wraps up the session. So let's dive right into accessibility and inclusion. There are more than 5 million Filipino children with disabilities nationwide. I found this 2020 statistic sourced from the Department of Education in the Philippines. Only 1.4% of them were enrolled for the upcoming school year. And we certainly see the same patterns, and we have similar challenges in the United States. Here we have data from a rapid assessment of disability that was conducted by WDARE. And this is a participatory research project that aims to improve the sexual and reproductive health of women with disability in the Philippines. So this study was conducted in 2016, but they focused on Quezon City and Ligao City. They found that 7.14% of the population of Quezon City has a disability. And this chart shows functional limitations documented in Quezon City: vision, hearing, mobility, hands and fingers, concentrating, remembering, learning, etc. And as you were reminded in the homework, inclusivity is a defining feature of the SALT approach to online Jesuit education and of the adaptive design for learning framework. So the term accessibility refers to creating inclusive experiences for learners with cognitive, visual, and hearing differences, as well as language and things like internet access differences. Across the Philippines and all over the world, due to stigmas, lack of understanding, lack of budget, there are so many barriers to inclusivity and accessibility in educational institutions. About 3 years ago, I worked with Loyola University Chicago to design and develop a certificate program called Leading Inclusive Catholic Schools. In the United States, more Catholic schools have begun opening their doors to students with disabilities. And these schools need support and guidance in how to effectively build more inclusive environments. So the online certificate program that I helped design aims to build the knowledge and experiential base of Catholic school administrators to develop school-wide systems, structures, and supports for all learners. So if your school or institution is exploring inclusive practices, you might want to take a look at this online program. Also, some reading that might be helpful. The Journal of Catholic Education published a special issue last year called Inclusion in Catholic Schools. I include that in our shared folder in the handout section. So if you're interested in pursuing that and looking for ideas, that may be helpful to you.
Hi, Kate. Sorry to interrupt, but there was some comments over chat. Would you mind just making the slides a little bigger for everyone to see?
Oh, I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
So sorry. Does that help?
Yes, it's now on full screen. So.
Okay, great. So this is a short video excerpt that shares more about the All Are Welcome program, and I think it captures some of the key things to think about if you're looking to provide an inclusive environment at your institution. We'll start out hearing from a principal and a teacher who are receiving a student with Down syndrome at their school for the very first time. The student's name is Dee, and we'll also hear from her parents and from one of the administrators of the All Are Welcome program.
And that's how magical it was. When you're looking forward to doing something for 4 or 5 years and you've really thought about this, you're expecting it to be some grandiose event. Right. You know, I don't know if I thought like a white horse was going to trot up Bridge Avenue and drop this girl off on our doorstep, but I couldn't sleep the night before because I was so excited. Dee's mom brought her. She walked in. 5 minutes later, I'm sitting in my office looking at the computer going, now what? But it was that typical. It was just like any other new student that we've ever had in our class.
Absolutely. I think the level of compassion that we are seeing from all the students is just, it's mind-blowing.
The weight of the world was off our shoulders. And my daughter was not being marginalized.
Not only was she welcome, but she was being celebrated, as opposed to being put in a corner with baby toys. She's being sat at a table with a pencil and a piece of paper, and she's being taught how to write her name.
And I think the more we segregate children and put them into these slots or boxes, we're not showing the rest of the world what their value is. The All Are Welcome program to me has been probably one of the most formidable things I've ever taken part in my life. I think it's done so much for me in terms of letting me know that my thoughts that I've had throughout these years about inclusion were on track.
The big goal of All Are Welcome is to increase the capabilities of the Catholic school system all across Chicagoland so that kids with disabilities can be included in classrooms with their typically developing peers.
And that's how magical it was.
So another source I wanted to tell you about is Scoops of Inclusion. So Infinite Flow, the dance company I shared with you at the beginning of this session, they visit a lot of schools in the United States, but when COVID closed schools down, they wanted to bring their assembly program online. So this became Scoops of Inclusion, a film, and it's a teaching package for kids, schools, and families. It comes with lesson plans, worksheets, and contests, and it can easily be integrated into school curriculum. So, and it also can be enjoyed as a family activity, and it's all free. So if you go to scoopsofinclusion.org, you'll be able to see and then share the materials with your colleagues or your family. I should note their curriculum is geared towards grade school and high school. So for university educators, there's other content on the infiniteflow.org website that may provide support in inclusion discussions with your faculty and university students. I should note, and you probably noted this as well, in ADL, accessibility is mostly focused on internet and broadband access for low bandwidth learners. We understand that not all institutions can accommodate the range of learners' needs. But it's important that faculty identify any technology or bandwidth issues as soon as class starts or even before class starts if the syllabus is distributed ahead of time. You would have seen reference to that in the homework. And the course design should also include arrangements for low bandwidth or unstable connectivity, as well as for students who are designing on their mobile device. Really, when you think about low bandwidth students and how it can really jeopardize their success in a course, whether they can access materials or not, it also can create a sense of shame and anxiety and leave them feeling unimportant. I have this chart from a colleague of mine from DePaul University, Daniel Stanford. He developed this last year. He called it the bandwidth immediacy matrix, and it's a great way to think through accessibility in a course. So we have two axes, bandwidth and immediacy. The immediacy axis refers to how quickly we expect students to respond when interacting with us and each other. So the green zone is basically the accessible friendly zone where you have readings with text and images, discussion boards, and email. So online instructors have been using those three tools for decades. And in fact, when I first started teaching online 15 years ago, I used the same. I used those three things and occasionally the telephone with some students during office hours. The blue zone includes low bandwidth tools such as collaborative documents or group chat and messaging. For group chat, WhatsApp or Slack can allow groups of students to communicate easily and in real time without having to schedule a synchronous session. The yellow quadrant includes audio and video on demand for those instructors who like to record screencasts or podcasts of their lectures. It also includes asynchronous discussions with audio and video, which is the kind of the thing that you're seeing with software like VoiceThread or Flipgrid. And that upper right red quadrant, which is where we are right now, it's reserved for tools that require both high bandwidth and high immediacy. And the best examples are Zoom or Skype. And there's a number of reasons why it's a good idea to be frugal with using Zoom in an online course, and inclusion is one of the best reasons, in my opinion. So if you were able to complete the homework, you saw that there are a lot of things to consider with regards to online course accessibility. I want to take a quick moment to look at the technology, accessibility and technology homework that was very well done by Katrina Maymay. This example will also go in our shared folder. Are you able to see that?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, great. So you see here that that Miss Maymay really took time with each tool, tech tool, going through to see whether there was adequate support for them. And then she applies coaching guidance on how to encourage students to do different things to make sure that they're up to speed on the technology. So just thoughtful approach. And then when it came to the accessibility questions, the same. She really spent time answering thoughtfully to these questions. She didn't just tick off the box. She provides a great example here. So without going through all of these one by one, you'll have a chance to look through it, but I just wanted to call this out and acknowledge great work. So the power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. If you know who Tim Berners-Lee is, he's a British computer scientist, best known as the inventor of the World Wide Web. So he was thinking about inclusion from the beginning, and I think we need to consider it that way as well. I think that you'll find with online courses, it may be easier to include more students than it would in a brick and mortar setup. So again, always worth exploring more ways that your institution can include more students. Let's move forward. So in the survey last time, many of you asked for more discussion of coaching after we talked about the appreciation, coaching, and evaluation categories of feedback. So everyone gets a coach when everyone is a coach. I love this quote from Roger Connors. He's a thought leader on organizational and individual performance. And I actually attended a presentation of his earlier this year, and he had some compelling ideas. This quote here is central to his book, which is called Get a Coach, Be a Coach. And he says that many professionals, when asked who their coach is, they say, Google's my coach. And in fact, I think at the beginning of this course, we asked you where you all got your support for online course, for designing and evaluating online courses. And many of you selected Google as well. So this was compelling. What he suggests is that the coach no longer be in charge. Flip the accountability model and put the learner in charge of their coaching. So when the learner, or in this case, the faculty member, is accountable for the coaching experience, that empowers them as an individual. I think this model will also help in faculty in receiving feedback. So if they take charge and say, I'm ready for your review of my online course, and these are a few things I'd like your thoughts on, they may be able to metabolize the feedback better. Connors basically says there are 2 steps to develop a coaching culture at your institution. He says, ask leaders to be clear about the need for a coaching culture. So you definitely need buy-in from leadership, department heads, chairman. I know some of you hold those roles. And then the key is to train on how to ask for a coach and how to be a coach. So he made it that simple. Of course, it isn't that simple, but if you can ladder up to these two main tasks, you're well on your way to developing a coaching culture. He also mentioned the Harvard research that shows that asking for advice instead of feedback will help you pull more information. So asking explicitly, I'd like your advice on my online course. What can I improve? In one study, they asked 200 people to offer input on a job application letter for a tutoring position. Some people were asked to provide this feedback in the form of input in the form of feedback, while others were asked to provide advice. Those who provided feedback tended to give vague, generally praising comments. And this would be an example in your context. Your course meets most of the requirements. You have a creative approach to teaching online. I think the students will be engaged. Overall, great job. So at a glance, it's good feedback, right? But is it really telling you to do anything or how you can improve on your course? So as you can imagine, when they found that when people were asked to give advice, they offered more critical and actionable input. So note the specific action items here. I would add in more opportunities for the students to collaborate. Be sure to revise the group project to include accommodations for students with low bandwidth. Also, include a rubric for the discussion questions so students know what you expect of them. Now, of course, I don't include any of the softening and the appreciation in this example, but as you can tell, it's three things that they can act on right away, and it will definitely improve the online course. Whereas the feedback really wouldn't make any difference other than the faculty member maybe feeling appreciated. So in the Harvard study, those that were asked to provide advice suggested 34% more areas of improvement and 56% more ways to improve. This is significant. So for all of our talk about feedback, it may be worth coaching your faculty to ask for advice as you try to grow your coaching culture. Advice tends to focus on future actions, and this is the essence of the coaching we've been encouraging throughout the homework. If you rely too heavily on the rubric, you'll miss out on great opportunities to improve the courses and also coach your colleagues. So as I mentioned the last time, you'll want to include all three types of feedback for your faculty: appreciation, coaching, and evaluation, with an emphasis on coaching. And to develop your coaching culture, you may have to coach people on how to receive feedback. I want to talk a bit about that now. A few of you wrote in your survey about colleagues who may not be receiving feedback well. What makes it so hard for people to receive feedback? Well, I mentioned the research from Sheila Heen and Douglas Stone last time. Their book is called Thanks for the Feedback. They offer that feedback goes right at the tension between two core human needs: the need to learn and grow, and the need to be accepted just the way we are. So even a small suggestion can leave some people feeling angry or anxious, and saying things like, "Don't take this personally," sometimes makes it worse. Getting better at receiving feedback starts with understanding this tension and then managing the feelings that come up. So Heen and Stone offer steps to become a better feedback receiver. I thought it would be worth going through these. These are things that you can work on yourself and with your faculty. 1, know your tendencies. So we all have patterns to how we respond to feedback. Maybe you get angry, maybe you cry, perhaps you defend yourself on the facts. Once you know your tendencies, you can reassure yourself that you're exaggerating, and you can take a break or wait to respond after a day. Once the emotions subside, you can figure out whether there's something you can learn from the feedback. 2, disentangle the what from the who. Separate the message from the messenger. So if there's a relationship trigger, perhaps you have some kind of history with this person who's giving you feedback, it can be hard to hear the content of the feedback. So set aside those snap judgments and think about where the feedback is coming from and where it's going. Coach your faculty to remember that feedback is a gift and the goal is professional development and a better experience for your students. So it's really two goals. You have two goals when you're giving feedback: professional development and a better experience for your students. And I think just reinforcing that will really help them hear it better. Listen for coaching. So evaluations, like the rubric, tell you where you stand. Coaching allows you to learn and improve. As we talked about last time, some people assume the worst and think that something meant as coaching is a final evaluation. If you feel judged by feedback, you may get anxious and drown out the opportunity to learn. So the key is to work to hear feedback as valuable advice, and this makes it less emotionally loaded. Unpack the feedback. So sometimes it's not immediately clear whether feedback is valid and useful. And that's why one of the things I've really tried to work with you on is providing valid, useful, clear, actionable feedback. But if you're a receiver and it's not clear, before you accept or reject it, it's good to do some analysis to better understand it. So encourage faculty to dig into it and find out if there's more information that can help them understand the feedback. Ask and ask more often. So feedback is less likely to set off emotional triggers if you request it and direct it. So it's great if your faculty seek out the feedback versus it being delivered to them, like I mentioned earlier in the coaching discussion. But the suggestion here is to ask for feedback or advice throughout the year. And so maybe just training them or coaching them to say things like, what's something else I can do to make this course stronger or more effective for the students or more engaging for the students? Research has shown that those who explicitly seek critical feedback, that is, they're not just fishing for praise, they tend to get higher performance ratings. And Heen and Douglas think it's because someone who's asking for coaching is more likely to take what is said to heart and genuinely improve. But also, when you ask for feedback, you not only find out how others see you, to some degree, you also influence how they perceive you. When you ask for constructive criticism, you're communicating humility, respect, passion for excellence, and confidence. All really great qualities. So engage in small experiments. When someone gives you advice or coaching, test it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, try again, adjust your approach, or end the experiment. The big idea here, and what we've been discussing since January, is that your faculty's growth depends on their ability to pull value from criticism in spite of their natural responses. In spite of those knee-jerk moments, we still want them to pull value from the criticism and your advice. So it also depends on their willingness to seek out even more advice and coaching from you, from their peers, and from their students. Say thank you. I added this tip to go back to our feedback as a gift theme. Hopefully your faculty will thank you for the feedback. As we all know, it's a considerable time and thought investment to give a thorough review of an online course. But with any feedback, it's a good practice to say thank you. So your thoughts, would anyone like to weigh in on the topic of feedback before we move forward? Questions on feedback, how your comfort level with feedback? I'm not able to see the chat. I tried. Sorry.
It's okay. I can help look through it for you, Kate. Well, we're just getting some comments from Jervy saying that those are great ideas, and from Menon just saying thanks for uh, what you presented. Okay, there's an interesting comment here that you might want to comment on from Mocha. It's a challenge giving feedback to teens sometimes since some have triggers. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, teens are not the only ones who have triggers. I think all people do, adults, seniors, toddlers, we all have triggers. So, if you're talking about coaching your own teenager, or if you work at a high school, I think, with coaching students, helping them, having that meta conversation about coaching. So coaching about coaching, and you're saying, look, I'm noticing these patterns come up when I deliver feedback to you. And it's really impairing our ability to move forward or for you to grow because you're having such a strong emotional reaction. I want you to feel supported. I want you to feel psychological safety. What can we do together to prepare you to receive feedback next time? So that's one approach. But I think it's really just helping them be aware that it's okay that if they're triggered, people, it's not that we're triggered. It's just, how are we handling it when we're triggered? Are we stepping away? Are we taking a breath? Maybe we're sleeping on it, and that'll help in our response and our ability to metabolize it. So those are some suggestions, and I think they work just as well for adults as they do for teens.
Thanks, Kate. Since you mentioned adults, there's another comment, an interesting comment here that followed that previous comment about veteran teachers. I think this is coming from a situation wherein maybe some of the people here in the room have been given administrative roles, and then now they're administrators or leaders of teachers who have taught for more years than them, right? So is there a specific way to handle these cases? What's your advice regarding that?
What's worked for me, because, I've worked so much in universities as an instructional designer, where I'm going in and all of a sudden someone who's been teaching a course for 30 years, it says, who are you to come in here and give me feedback on how to teach and how to design a course? So I've been there. And what worked for me and what really aligns with I think the Jesuit approach and IPP is just the humility, bringing the humility in, and really saying, yes, you are the subject matter expert. You know your content better than anyone, but what I'm bringing is this new understanding of online course design. And there's a whole field of study that supports what I've learned in the SALT program. And that's what I'm bringing to you, because the research shows A, B, C, and D, and you have all the references you need in the ADL course. But the research shows, for instance, that videos longer than 4 minutes probably won't be watched in full. And over time, they'll start to hear you because they want to hear the data, especially if they're, veteran teachers or instructors. It's a lot easier to reach them with hard data about student engagement and online learning strategies. And what you don't find in ADL, you can find all over the internet. There's a ton of research out there about engagement strategies online and what proves effective for meeting the learning outcomes.
Thanks, Kate. I like that advice because I think what came to mind while you were sharing is that it brings the conversation back to the students, which is a common ground. I think whether you're a new teacher or a more senior teacher, I think it's safe to say that everyone would want the best for their students. So like showing the data, showing what you've observed is a great reminder for us to go back to. If you can take a few more questions, there are a couple of questions on the chat.
Sure.
There are also insights shared, so I invite everyone to head over chat to read the insights as well. But I'll jump to the questions so that we can hear from Kate. There's this question from Maria Ramilia Jimenez. Her question is, I'm interested in listen for coaching. Can you expound on this? I think she caught on the term that you used, listen for coaching. What do you mean by this?
Right. So we talked about a little bit last time what happens when signals are crossed. So you may hear feedback as kind of something that's set in stone, and you're a bad instructor and you don't understand course design and you might as well be fired. And really, they're just trying to coach you and help you to grow in your professional development. And so sometimes people hear coaching as evaluation, as something in black Sharpie, and it's on your permanent record. And it's not that. It's coaching. And so that's why I've tried really to move you all. I've tried to move you all away from the rubric, because the rubric is evaluation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, it's very clear: meets expectations, exceeds expectation, needs improvement. I mean, that is clear. But the holistic feedback is and should be coaching. So that's kind of what I mean. They actually they used different language. They said sort toward coaching, and I changed it for listen for coaching. So you may come up with your own phrase that works for your institution and your community, but we just want to lean in that direction as receivers of feedback for, okay, this is coaching. This is how I can grow and be better. And they're interested in my development. They're not interested in shutting me down or telling me I'm bad, which a lot of people hear feedback that way. So including myself at times. So definitely not unique that way.
Thanks, Kate. There's another question here. Now on the, I think the context here is sometimes when we ask for feedback from students, they see it as additional work. So for example, in our case, one of the challenges is getting students to complete that evaluation survey at the end of a course so that you could get some feedback on how you did as a teacher or on the course. But then usually if it's optional, not many students will make an effort to do it. Do you have any thoughts on this context?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, there are ways to do it so that it's not anonymous and that it's actually an additional assignment where you really empower them to give you constructive feedback on your course. That you might see more accountability if you do it that way, even if it's not, it can be a low stakes assignment. It doesn't have to really impact the final grade. And yet that may be one way to do it. It's tough. I mean, it's tough. It's tough even as professionals, just, I'm sure, asking your colleagues to complete a survey on something, and people get survey fatigue, just like Zoom fatigue. Survey fatigue is real. But, kind of to the point that Heen and Douglas make, if you can ask for it more frequently, you may end up getting more information if you just ask kind of little bite-sized feedback. So maybe after each course or once a week, you just ask them to do kind of a red light, yellow light, or green light to just get some kind of a formative feedback going and see what's going on. But they're just depending on the age group, because I can't really answer for, for all students, but I think there are different strategies you can use to make it really easy for them to give you kind of a pulse check on where they are.
Thanks, Kate. We have one last question over chat here from Von Katindoy. Based on your experience, how critical is a culture of trust as a foundation of the culture of coaching?
Oh yeah, I think trust is very important. I think that, and we've talked about vulnerability, just getting into a coaching situation. One recommendation that Roger Collins made is that when you're asking for a coach, when you're kind of seeking out a coach, the research found that when you seek out someone you have a weaker connection with, So not someone you work very closely with, and maybe not someone you know very well, but you just kind of know from afar in your workplace and at your educational institution. That person is more likely to be an effective coach for you than someone you know better. So if you're interested in kind of his research and it's really strong, I do recommend looking at Get a Coach, Be a Coach, to help support growing a coaching culture. But yes, I think trust is important. And I think, having some kind of just agreed contract or guidelines, maybe contract's not the word, but just kind of when you set up a coaching arrangement, what you want from it, and what you're going to bring to it, I think will help establish trust.
Thanks, Kate. There's one more question that came up. Maybe we can
Sure. That's why I'm
entertain
here.
this.
Yeah.
Menon, would you mind expounding on this? So Menon said over chat, regarding unpacking the feedback, how do you start a clean slate with your superior who will not be moved for quite some time? So maybe Menon can add a little bit of context for Kate.
Well, this is an interesting question. We run through a cycle of appointments, and sometimes they go by years and they go by reappointments. And so I just thought of an experience where you might have had previous negative experiences with a colleague or a superior who hands out feedback. And that person is not really going to change, but part of the adjustment is you trying to unpack the feedback. What might be a good set of tips so that you can start a clean slate? I think this looks easy on paper, but when you try to sort previous experiences, that's quite a lot of unpacking as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I would do. I don't know if this would work for everyone, but if I were in that situation, what I would do is I would take that feedback and I would go to a trusted colleague and I would say, I just got this feedback and I'm having a really hard time seeing the value in it and seeing what I really need to act on and separating that from the person who delivered it. And I would ask that trusted colleague to help me interpret it neutrally. I mean, the goal is really to come at it with neutrality. So to take the emotions away, and for all of us, it's just going to take a different amount of time and different techniques. But if you go to a trusted colleague, someone has your back, someone who they respect you, that they want you to grow, and that they're willing to be honest with you, I would take it to them, see what they say, and help formulate a response based on what they say. And I'll say again, the response should always begin with thank you. Even if it's really, really hard to hear, even if you don't agree with it, it's really important to say thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I think we've been able to go through the questions so far.
Excellent.
If you have any other questions, feel free to head over chat and put them in, and occasionally Kate will stop and answer your questions as she moves forward. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks so much. Great. So let's go over the capstone assignments. So for your final assignment, you're going to complete an online course review. So this could be a collection of your ADL 2.0 assignments stitched together, or it may be a fresh review of another course. So it's up to you if you want to start anew. Your review should include a completed ADL rubric, as well as a separate document for holistic feedback. Now, the holistic feedback document can take the form of an email with subheadings. So just a well-organized email. We definitely don't want to see a block of text. Or it can take the form of an outline with talking points for a live conversation. So maybe you're planning on delivering the feedback, the holistic feedback, in a conversation or during a meeting. So we will accept a detailed outline of talking points for that conversation. The more detail you provide, the better. And there is a rubric in Canvas, and I'll walk through the criteria here for this assignment. So you'll be evaluated on needs improvement designations. You'll want any and all of those to include holistic feedback. So if there's anything on the rubric that needs improvement, and we expect that there will be, you'll need to provide coaching language to help them get to a place where they're meeting or exceeding expectations. With your tone, we're looking at for you to offer the feedback kindly and thoughtfully. Specific suggestions, your feedback needs to be specific and actionable. Coach content community, you'll want to invoke the 3 C's because this is so central to the ADL design approach. And similarly, the 5 8s should also be invoked. Accessibility, pay special attention to accessibility in your review. And finally, your review should include expressions of appreciation, coaching, and evaluation with an emphasis on coaching. In your evaluation and maybe part of your coaching culture, you might want to remind your faculty what it says in the ADL course. No course design is ever a masterpiece. So no one will have a perfect score on an online course. No one's going to have just all glowing reviews. No one. Online courses are meant to be tested and improved with each iteration. And courses will only improve based on feedback from faculty and students. So keep that in mind when you are completing your assignment. Questions on the capstone assignment?
Question.
Yes.
Shouldn't we identify the perspective from which we begin our feedback? Or should we assume it's always a friendly colleague?
Oh, I see what you mean. You mean setting the context for your relationship with this person? I mean, that if that's helpful to you, I think that's great. But that would only be, that's not something that we would evaluate for you. I mean, ideally, you're going to get to a place where you can give a similar review to all colleagues, independent of your relationship with them, you know, to be as objective as possible, and not have to kind of work around those relationship challenges. But if you want to include a note about that, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
Kate, there are some specific questions over chat. Maybe we can entertain them. These 2 questions are related from Annie Rose and Vaughn. Do we have a template, and can they use the worksheets from the past, or is there a different template for this final submission?
You can use, well, you have the rubric, right? Everybody has the rubric, it's in our folders. But as far as your holistic feedback, no, there's no template. You can, as I said, you can stitch together the assignments if you've made effort and worked on those assignments and they comprise together holistic review. You are welcome to stitch them together, but keeping in mind too, you know, you won't want to give your faculty a 12-page review. So it's good to be succinct, clear, actionable, and it's really up to you how to do this. I mean, I think when you're completing this assignment, thinking about a system for yourself that will work for you and your delivery of reviews. Not everybody, it can't be a one size fits all. The rubric accomplishes part of that, but with regards to holistic feedback, that really needs to be custom to kind of how you normally communicate with people. So however best to kind of deliver all of this information in a neat package, it's up to you how you want to format it. But certainly you can use the homework as your beginning template. I would just encourage you to whittle it down so that it's just more friendly to read.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions here. There are some questions outside the capstone. So we'll deal with the questions related to the capstone first, and then we'll jump back into some questions related to other topics discussed today. So there was one question directed to me about, just to clarify, and I think it's good to clarify this. So if they pass the 5 assignments already, they will also need to do this capstone assignment, right? It's not an or. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, they're expected to do this so that they know that they have everyone. I want everyone to walk out of this series with a complete online course review. You know, some of you may have only done a couple of the assignments. Maybe you've done all 5 of them and only checked boxes. Some of you obviously spent a lot more time, but yeah, it's important that you all deliver a solid online course review, one that you would feel confident delivering to your faculty.
Thanks, Kate. Here we have a question from Dr. Elianan. Given the wealth of feedback in evaluating a course, I suppose we also need to incorporate how the instructor might prioritize specific areas of improvement. How do you suggest this can be done?
Absolutely prioritize. Prioritization really depends on the field of study, the age group, the circumstances. So you'll need to decide at your institution and in your department what's most important. You know, there are some criteria that just aren't as important for some fields than others. So if you want to include a rationale for why you prioritize those things, feel free to do that. That may help you if you just construct a short rationale to say, I focused on these criteria because of A, B, and C.
Thank you. So I'm going to raise a question that I might have missed. Sorry, Tin. Can we put together the different evaluations of different classes we evaluated so that we come up with a holistic feedback for the entire subject area? I guess this maybe just explain a little bit of context. It might have been that they evaluated different sessions, let's say, of the same teacher from the same subject area. So I guess the question here is, in this particular assignment, are we expecting just one course, one session, or one module? Or can it be holistic feedback given based on different observations or different sets of observations?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that works for me. If that is the mode that you will often be evaluating courses or teachers, I mean, if it's a teacher across several courses and you're observing different iterations of the same content or even different classes, basically I want you to be able to compose a document that realistically you could deliver to a faculty member at your institution. So if it's going to take a different form than what we've described here, then please just include your explanation for that.
Thanks, Kate. I'll bring up another question regarding the assignment, and then we have questions about inclusivity, which I think would be interesting to discuss as well. So there's a question from Cha: who will be coaching us on the assignment after we submit? Maybe where Cha is coming from is that, to be honest, in the past few assignments, the way coaching was done was that Kate would review, would browse through your submissions, she'd highlight some things, and then she'd use the information to actually add inputs into our succeeding sessions. So maybe I'll just explain from the SALT perspective, and then Kate can come in. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this capstone assignment is that in this particular assignment, we will actually rate you based on the rubric, and we will give you some feedback. So primarily, it will be the SALT team who will check the capstone assignment, and then we will consult Kate if in case there are some things that we'd like for her to review or to give feedback on. Kate, anything to add regarding that?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. And yeah, we tried to make this rubric as specific as possible, so it would help you complete the assignment to effect, but that you'd also know what the SALT team is looking for. So hopefully you will feel coached in this process.
Thank you. There's another question here from Art. I think we sort of touched on it a while ago, but again, it might be good to clarify. For the capstone assignment, is it okay to simply put together and rework and improve on the past 5 assignments? And then there's a question about due date, which I will answer after you answer this first question. So is it okay to rework? Okay.
Yes, please, please, please. I don't want you to reinvent the wheel. If you've already been spending considerable time on the assignments, please, that's what we want to see again, presented all together in an elegant format. Some of you haven't had time or haven't been able to focus on the homework assignments, and we understand, but we hope that for the purposes of this course and to come out of this course, that you're still able to deliver a complete course review.
Thanks. There's another question from Annie Rose, very similar to an earlier question. Is it okay to only focus on 1 quarter or 2 quarters and not the entire course? I think
Sure.
Kate said something about that a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
I'm also getting some private messages about feedback on the 5 assignments. So I just want to clarify that unfortunately, because of the sheer number of the cohort, we weren't able to really give individual feedback on your specific assignments. And this is really one of the reasons why we came up with this capstone assignment, which we will commit to really thoroughly review and give feedback on. If there are specific things that you are unsure of, feel free to ask us over email. Hopefully the past few sessions have provided some constructive feedback from your peers and from Kate's sessions as well, that will help you review or evaluate your own work. But if in case any of you would not really feel as confident to move forward without any feedback on your previous assignments, let us know of what you're unsure of, and then maybe we can deal with it on a case-to-case basis. Kate?
Yes, I just pulled up the example folder. If you can see this. Oh, I'm not sharing. Oh, I am. Yes. This has, and I'll add Katrina May's assignment as well, but this has really excellent examples, great work that's been completed by your colleagues throughout this course. So you can see what good looks like if you're not sure. These were just top examples of feedback, actionable feedback. So, and everyone should have access to this ADL 2.0 folder. I should say 2. It includes all the stuff that we did in breakout sessions. So if you're looking for ideas, all that wonderful content that you all loaded in those Scribe documents. We also have all the slide decks are in here, and handouts, and all the assignments are in one place. So this should also support you in completing your final project.
So I think if in case you've missed where to find this folder, so if you noticed, after every session, we would send an email to you just to recap some of the things that we talk about. So we will send you a link to this folder that Kate just showed you for your reference as you work on the final assignment. There were some requests privately messaged to me in terms of extending the deadline. We will consider these, and then we'll send an email about this. I hope you don't mind. The reason why we set a 2 week from now deadline is really just to make sure that we don't issue certificates too late or too far from this last session. So the timeline that we'd like to work with is, if you submit 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks after that, we will be able to finish checking whatever has been submitted and already issue certificates. But we'll look into the possibility of 2 batches just to make sure that we can accommodate those who might not be able to submit by the 22nd. So the submission is more important than you doing it fast. I think we'd rather you really spend time working on this so that you can synthesize whatever you've gotten from this course. So we'll send you an email to clarify those deadlines. So for now, we'll aim for June 22, but we will clarify the adjustments in the deadline if ever the decision has been made. So we'll let you know within the week in the same email that we will send to you about today's session. From the deadline, so there's a question here. Maybe I'll just answer this, Kate. From the deadline, how long will we know if we pass? So please give us 2 weeks. There are close to 300 of you, so we will need to review all of these submissions. And if we will use the rubric. So you should see some scores in the rubric, just so it can validate if you've hit the mark as far as the rubric is concerned. And then we will give brief holistic feedback on your work as well. So if you do not receive any feedback asking you to revise this or that, then you should be okay. There are no grades for this course. So it's really just a matter of completing the assignments so that we also have evidence of your meeting the competences set for this particular course. Okay, so there's a question about ADL1. I will answer that at the end of today's session. So let's just park that for now, as well as questions about the certificates from ADL1. Okay, so I'll make sure to clarify some of those things before we end today's session. Okay, maybe we can answer a question about. Sorry, there's a question from Trish that I wasn't able to ask earlier. Is there a prescribed or recommended length? So I know, Kate, you mentioned that the format is pretty open, but do you expect a certain length? I don't know, number of pages, maximum?
I would say no more than 3 pages, really. I mean, when you think about what the faculty will want to read, and there is a point where too much feedback is a thing. So I would say no more than 3 pages for the holistic feedback when you have a detailed outline. And it doesn't have to be even that long, but we're looking for quality, not quantity.
Thanks. So I'll ask a question here posted about inclusivity. Just to go back to one of the earlier topics for today from Sir Pao. Going back to inclusivity, how can we consider those with low-grade depression or slight hearing problems or moderate concentration difficulties when these are not usually clinically diagnosed? So I guess the context here is sometimes you observe some things as a teacher, but then they're not formally reported to you yet, since maybe the parents have not brought their children to evaluate these conditions. Is there something that we can think about regarding this?
I mean, with regards to online design, I think going back to the bandwidth immediacy matrix, thinking about immediacy and thinking about, well, if these learners are taking a little more time, if they take more time to process information, not expecting them to be engaged in synchronous activities with their classmates, offering asynchronous options. This not only helps the low bandwidth people, but it may help the different learning styles that were just mentioned. So yeah, as much variety as can be provided, so that all of these learners, I mean, in ADL, it's recommended that everything is converted into a PDF or an EPUB file. So that may be helpful for a number of students, including blind students who have screen readers and things like that. So in general, moving to that green quadrant, you'll end up serving a lot more people.
Thank you. I think we've gone through the questions. I hope I didn't miss any. If I did, you can just ask it again. Okay, sige. So there's a private message sent to me about a possible template for the capstone homework. I think as mentioned by Kate, there isn't necessarily a template. As mentioned by Kate, just to recap, what she mentioned is ideally a maximum of 3 pages, so it's not too lengthy. So imagine that this is a document that you might actually give a colleague of yours who you're evaluating. As far as templates are concerned, I think one way, a good starting point is to look at the rubrics from the previous assignments. If you're working on the same course, you can begin, a starting point might be to copy paste those rubrics into a document. And then to build holistic feedback from there. And that's the starting point for your document. Otherwise, I'm not so sure also if it's wise to give a template, most especially because some of the questions raised earlier might also mean you may have different ways of looking at things. Like some might be evaluating a quarter, some might be evaluating a course. So this is also one of the reasons why a template for this particular assignment might not work. Kate, anything to add?
No, that was great. That was great. I mean, this is not a one size fits all. Evaluating online courses is not a one size fits all because they're all so different. The rubric is a start, and then what you build on it is what will really add value for your faculty.
All right. Okay, so I've also gotten a few more messages about the deadline. Do know that you have been heard, and we will consider these messages. Will again, as I mentioned earlier, please expect an email from the SALT team this week where we will clarify these closing procedures, deadlines, among other things. If after that email you still have some concerns, just let us know. We usually are pretty flexible, but we also try to balance flexibility with also making sure that we don't delay the completion of the courses as much as we can, right? So yes, so we will take into consideration the extension of deadlines requested over chat. We don't want it too far from this session too, because you might forget about us or the course and go back to everyday life as we do. Okay, any other questions about the assignments? Again, if you have questions about ADL 1.0, I will say something about that towards the end of today's session to clarify for everyone. Okay, I can see some silence over chat now. Hopefully the silence means we've addressed the questions. If you have further questions, most especially about completion or the capstone assignment, you know our email address, it's salt@ateneo.edu. Please feel free to send us an email to ask your clarifications. So I'll just hand it back to Kate, if just like put things to a close before I give some final reminders.
Well, this is great. I'm so thankful for all of you for participating. And once again, the SALT team, thanks for bringing us all together. This has been a rough year for all of us, and being here with you has definitely been a bright light in a dark time. So I'm thankful to all of you, and stay in touch. I'm gonna put my email in the chat box, and I won't always be able to respond right away, but if you have a pressing question, I'm going to share it with you, and I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Maybe we could give a virtual round of applause to Kate.
Thank you.
I think this is I think it's very interesting because, Kate has been with us on day one. For those of you who were in her session on the 3 Cs, that was actually the first webinar we ran as we shifted to online learning. And it's very interesting that we've gotten Kate back. And thank you, Kate, for spending some time with us and sharing your expertise and experience. We've surely learned a lot from the past few sessions. And hopefully everyone else also learned a lot from the session. So just a few things before we close today's session. Looks like we will be closing earlier than expected. We don't need to keep everyone, but allow me just to spend the last 5 minutes to share some important announcements related to some of the questions raised earlier or some of the things that we can look forward to. First of all, on behalf of the SALT team, we thank Kate for facilitating the session, and we also thank everyone for joining us and committing for the past few months. It's been a few months since we've come together. I hope that you also enjoyed the experience of working together with your colleagues and exchanging ideas. Now, one of the purposes of ADL 2.0 is also to support ADL 1.0, which means that one of the reasons why we've specifically invited most especially department chairpersons, supervisors to this session is hopefully for you to be more equipped or more confident to actually evaluate the courses submitted to you in ADL 1.0. So since we close ADL 2.0, at least this last session today, I just want to announce that for ADL 1.0, for Basic Ed, certificates will be released beginning next week. So we will send you an email within the week just to do a final confirmation of the list of completers for ADL 1.0. And if you have no comments on that list, then we will generate the certificates and we will send them over to the specific participants by the end of next week. For the Loyola schools, we will give you a timeline. I think we'll give you a few more weeks to finalize your review of ADL 1.0. And then as soon as we're able to finalize the list, we're aiming by the first week of July to also distribute the certificates already. So don't worry about the dates. We will send you an email with all of these dates, but I just want to let everyone know that these are things that you can expect coming up. A few logistical things. I noticed that some of you have not been able to put in your name or edit your account settings on Canvas. I hope that if you are not so sure if you did this, you can take a screenshot of what you can see on screen right now. If you're sure, then you're fine. But if you're not, please do check if you've updated your account settings, because we will not know that it is you who submitted all of these assignments if we don't see your names and email addresses on Canvas. So we've also sent a message, I think, to most of you who we noticed who have not been able to update. That's okay. You still have time to do so, but please do so that we can properly account for the submissions that you have been giving. So as I mentioned earlier, the deadline for the capstone project as of the moment is June 22, but will probably be moved based on the requests today. The initial aim for the release of certificates is on July 5 to 9, but we might do it in batches since not everyone might be able to make the June 22 deadline. We will again announce these dates and deadlines over email. Finally, what's next? So it's been a year since we've went on this journey of learning about ADL, shifting to online learning. And as a way of harvesting what we've learned so far, we'd just like to announce that there's this event that we're putting together, which we invite you to take part in. It's called the Learning Exchange. So for 3 Wednesdays of July, we will be inviting you to join us for small breakout sessions about very specific topics that faculty might want to share about. So we invite you to participate in 2 ways. Number one, if you'd like to share. So if there's something that you learned about in the past school year of going into online learning, even if it was not a success, it's an experiment that you did, you wouldn't want to do it anymore, but you learned a lot from that experiment, from trying that out in your class, maybe you'd like to share about it. So we will send an invite to you soon within the week again regarding this event. So if you'd like to share, just a 15-minute sharing about a specific practice that worked, that didn't work, what you learned from it, we encourage you to volunteer to share to the community whatever it is that you discovered. If you don't want to share, though, we invite you to attend. So for these 3 Wednesdays, We will have different sharings from higher ed to basic ed. And we also have separate sessions for formators and administrators where we hope that it can really be an exchange of practices and learnings from the past year of going online. So we'll share with you more details regarding this again over